folks. Hour 2 underway here. Chad Adams Show, chadadamshow.com. Glad to have you with us. Mike Pence having been over there in downtown Raleigh, but with us in studio right now, Governor Pat McCrory here, high atop our lofty perches here.
Mike Pence, a great guy.
Yeah, and a fellow governor.
We were elected the same year, 2012. I was a mayor. He was a congressman beforehand. So
that's right.
We get along great. I think he's a great vice presidential pick.
Well, it's an honor to have you here in the studio, and we appreciate you coming in. And we've known each other for many years, and you were part of my previous show down in the Wilmington area. I got to ask you, we'll get into things. There's a lot to talk about, and it must be interesting. I remember talking to you as then candidate McCrory and looking at this and your vision for what we needed to do: cut regulations, cut taxes, get people back to work. The message never changed. You had these 3 E's. I think it was efficiency, economy, and education. Those things never changed. You've been consistent in your belief about this. Even when we disagree, you've been consistent. And it must come as a shock to you that people are better off than they were 4 years ago. If you ask that question, that's your campaign, basically. It's got to be kind of strange to see these vicious attacks. An attorney general that doesn't want to fight to support the law and getting involved in these social issues. But let's first talk about the economy. Tell us what your view on the economy is. I mean, we've got our facts.
Well, it's nice
and stuff
to talk about because I think the left wants to divert the attention away from our success or downplay the success and try to act as though North Carolina is just like a Rust Belt state. In fact, I just saw one of Roy Cooper's new commercials, and it looks like we're in a depression. We might as well be in Pennsylvania somewhere.
It's like he filmed it in a ghost town that was his hometown.
It really does, and it's very demeaning to our state. But, the fact of the matter is, when I came into office 3.5 years ago and had my swearing-in ceremony right outside your studios here, and while looking down the main street of Raleigh, we had an unemployment rate of about 9.4%, fifth highest in the country. We owed $2.6 billion for unemployment compensation to the federal government and President Obama. No way to pay it back. I didn't know about that until I got elected, by the way.
Most people didn't.
We had a $500 million missed forecast on Medicaid spending. We had barely enough to hold up for rainy day reserves in state government in case there was a major problem. We were in deep trouble. We hadn't given teacher pay raises for 5 years under the Democratic leadership. And you wouldn't know that by the commercials and by the Raleigh News and Observer and
or even by the teachers'
or
union,
Winston-Salem newspapers, or by the teachers' unions. In fact, you wouldn't know it from Roy Cooper either, because he just says, well, I talked to a couple of teachers. They don't believe we're getting these pay raises. Well, the facts are we're giving the largest pay raises in the United States of America to teachers in North Carolina, and I'm proud of that. And we're doing it in a reasonable, respective way, in an affordable way with no tax increases. In fact, we also, when I came to office, had the highest income tax and the highest corporate tax in the Southeast. So what have we done in 3.5 years? We've reduced the corporate rate and tax rate by a large percentage from 7.7% down to less than 5% now. Corporate tax rate.
And because of increases in revenue, it's
going to ratchet down. We've got more revenue coming in, and corporate tax rate's going down again next month because we've got more revenue than we've ever had coming in North Carolina. Our teacher pay raise is the largest in
two teacher raises.
Oh, huge!
Not just one.
Very pleased with it, and then also we paid off our $2.6 billion of debt to the federal government
ahead of. It wasn't even a schedule, but I mean, with your choice for Dale Falwell and
we got to elect Dale Falwell
for treasurer. He's a bang-up job.
He'd be a great treasurer, and we have over $1 billion now in reserves in that. In case there's another recession, which could happen anytime in our country. We've got $1 billion in reserves, which, by the way, previous administration has just spent everything.
We've spoken to a number of your secretaries, and
I got a good team.
You do have I know some of them well, as you well know. And I tell you, when they took over, though, looking at the atrophy that had taken place in these government buildings, at just just the underutilization of space, the waste, and you had no idea how bad it was.
It was terrible. In fact, being sworn in right down to the fountains in front of the old state capitol building built in 1841, Ann and I were walking up to get sworn in and then sworn at. But
daily.
The fountains were not working.
Right.
And full of dirty trash and water and brown. It was disgusting. I remember going, Ann went, could they at least clean up the place here? And they were fixed within a week. They're working now. Beautiful fountains with kids playing in them, but that was a metaphor of the broken government.
And it's amazing that it didn't get talked about. And we've been borrowing money from different funds to balance the budget prior to you coming in. That has stopped also. And it doesn't, people say, oh, you're just giving accolades because you like the governor and all this. But no, the facts are what they are. Hundreds of thousands of people back at work that weren't at work. Unemployment rate going down. State revenues going up. Taxes going down. People flocking here to do business. Rated as one of the top economies in the nation. Beating the national average, by the way. The Obama recovery at 2%, if lucky in any given quarter.
Right.
This economy surging ahead. And yet, the aspersions being cast by groups like WRAL and others in the media, really going after House Bill 2, which you didn't author, by the way, and several other instances out there about voter ID. What do you make of this? I mean, you're looking at the one story of this great comeback, the 4 years, these 4 years have been great and moving forward, and then getting mired in these other issues.
Well, the left is going to have to divert the attention away from our success to win the election. And then not only are they going to divert the attention away, they're going to malign our own state to make it happen. And they're going to try to tell people how bad everything is and how the governor, McCrory, has destroyed our state. And they've got the media behind him. You're right, WRAL, Mr. Goodman, is a top donor to the Cooper campaign. He's also a top donor to the organizations that pay the protesters that then get on the news at WRAL.
And they're writing myriad of unsigned editorials. The one just recently.
So that's a super PAC basically working for Roy Cooper. We've got some extreme left-wing environmental super PACs that have full-page ads in the newspaper today on coal ash, which is the only administration, the McCrory administration, is the one who's cleaning it up.
It was there during Hunt, the second terms, the third and fourth term of Hunt, through all of Easley's terms. It was there through Purdue.
Through the Attorney General's 14 years.
Yeah, you had to deal with it.
He didn't do a thing.
You had to deal with it. And yet, when you're dealing with it, you're the bad guy.
Well, that's all well coordinated. There was controversy yesterday about some release of some testimony from the environmental
groups. What do you make of that? Your chief of staff, Thomas Stith, someone that worked for you, I think his name is Rudo.
He works for state government.
Ken Rudo.
He was an appointee of previous administration.
And testified that you were in this, that you were a part of a phone call. He then kind of changed the story a little bit, said you weren't part of the phone call. Yeah. But your staff, who keeps track of your time, I know because I've tried to schedule you for a long time. I know they keep track of everywhere you are. Said you weren't even part of the phone conversation. You were never part of changing the message in any way.
No, it's all coordinated. It's all coordinated by the political left because today they just happen to have a full-page ad in the Raleigh News and Observer.
The day after this becomes a story.
The day after a law firm, or the Southern Environmental Law Firm out of Chapel Hill, where Roy Cooper has raised almost $500,000. They just happen to have a full-page ad printed on this issue. The day they release partial testimony.
Yeah, not the rest of it, just
not the rest of it, just partial. So it's the media is being played.
And Don Vandervar, your secretary.
And the people of North Carolina are being played too, and that's the sad commentary.
And they're confused about a lot of this because they don't understand coalition. They don't understand HB2. They don't understand that. And so, having spoken to your secretary, Don Vandervar, a very competent guy, has been in the agency for 2 decades, more letters behind his name than all of us in this studio right now. And, I think he's doing a very competent job of dealing with this issue.
He's brilliant.
He is.
And he believes in a clean environment, and he also believes in that we ought to get rid of ridiculous regulation that makes no difference. So he's pro-business and he's pro-environment, and we believe you can be both. He treats business as a customer, not as the villain. But if the business does something bad, he'll level a very high fine, which he did, including to my previous employer, with the highest fine ever in North Carolina history.
Well, we're going to do this. We're going to take a break in a second. Again, our guest, Governor Pat McCrory, in our studios today. And when we get back, I would need to touch on the HB2 issue because I want to remind our listeners, you cautioned the Charlotte City Council, having been mayor of that city.
Yeah, it's not really HB2. It's talking about genders.
Yes.
Gender of your choice. Well, that's what this is all about.
And you warned Charlotte not to do what they did. You warned the General Assembly not to do stuff. Yet you get castigated for being the voice of reason in all this. The NBA, turns out the lead of the NBA is a donor to your opponent that moves the All-Star game. So much more to talk about with you after this break here. Governor Pat McCrory in the studios. Chad Adams Show, chadadamshow.com. Stay tuned. Continuing our discussion with Governor Pat McCrory, the great state of North Carolina, in an interesting re-election time, but also he's still running the state of North. He is the chief executive for the state, and the economy's doing great. The degree to which people are safe, that's the job number one. Number two is helping get government out of the way. He's done that as well, but he's having to deal with a myriad of issues that have popped up related to social and environmental that are oddly enough, seemingly coordinated. And I've got to ask you on the HB2 stuff. We talked about that right before the break. The Attorney General not wanting to defend that law or voter ID, and I want to talk about voter ID. But the degree to which it is, we're talking about gender. And the NBA, who took its All-Star game elsewhere, the head of the NBA, a donor to your opponent. I mean, this looks like
the former head of the NBA.
The former head of the NBA.
Right.
And so when we're looking at this, it is also interesting. You have to wonder, would they allow transgender males to apply for women's basketball and play for their teams the same way they're taking on North Carolina's law here? But that's not your answer. But what do you make of where this is going and what it's been like?
I think it's been total PCBS, as I said a couple weeks ago.
You did?
And it's political correctness madness, and it's selective hypocrisy by the corporate elite, by the media elite, by the sports elite, entertainment elite. I get lectured by George Clooney about North Carolina's gender restrictions on bathroom access and restroom and locker room for our universities and our high schools and our junior highs by George Clooney, who just got back from China promoting a movie. You know, China, where they put you in jail based upon your sexual orientation, which is horribly wrong, and yet they go to China. You know, Matt Damon, who's filming a movie in China right now where he plays someone from China, I might add. It's just hypocrisy. And, by the way, the NBA's playing games in China in the next 2 weeks.
Well, let's be
but they
really
can't play in North Carolina.
Private sector companies can configure their bathrooms any way
most
they
people
wish.
don't know that. The law actually says that we overturned a Charlotte ordinance which put a mandate on all private sector businesses in Charlotte to require gender identity or gender expression to be a qualification to get into the opposite gender's restroom, shower, or locker room, period. I don't think it's government's job to tell a private sector entity what their bathroom, restroom, and locker room laws should be, even though I may disagree with them.
But PayPal, Target, all these companies that
They
are
can
giving
do
you,
anything
they
they
can
want.
configure it. The law didn't affect them in any way.
No way. The law only impacts government buildings, universities, rest stops, state parks.
Yeah.
That's it. But you wouldn't know it by reading the McClatchy newspaper or anything else. And I've repeated it over and over again from Meet the Press to Fox News Hour to you name the national and local, but the New York Times, the Huffington Post.
WRAL, your own state, said that now, thanks to this law, literally said that if you go into a restaurant to apply, they can turn you down because of your gender identity.
Like that's happening.
And that's just not true.
It's just crazy. And
then,
I had bathrooms in downtown Raleigh, or restaurants, liberal restaurant owners, trying to make a point saying, we're going to take off the signs of our men's and women's restrooms. I'm going, why?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. That's fine. This law does not apply to you. And they get media stories on it. And by the way, I go to Asheville now, and some of the by the way, I don't care if it's a single toilet. Who cares?
Right.
But now in Asheville, apparently, to be politically correct, all the restaurants are taking off men's and women's signs, and it's causing terrible
mass
confusion.
Chaos. Yeah.
Well, people don't want to go into a restroom of someone of the opposite gender.
But nothing required them to change it before or since.
Nothing. The only thing we're saying, if you're a middle school ninth grader, you're going to have to be a boy to go into the boys' shower.
Well, last thing, your opponent.
That's not that complicated.
The emails have said that, the Attorney General actually went out and tried to destroy jobs. He actually tried to stop jobs.
Oh, he's
on this
promoting.
front.
What's amazing is the liberal left with Roy Cooper are promoting boycotts of our state. And then when boycotts occur, they complain about it and say, look what you've done. This is the liberal hypocrisy.
But your Commerce Department is stacked up with people wanting to come here, from what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that companies is
our
gangbusters
pipeline is
right
full. And, I'm sorry, Ringo Starr, who I love as a drummer, and Bruce Springsteen, and 5 other concerts that haven't come that have been repeated over and over again. You notice they're not headlines on the front page when the concerts that do come. The 98% that are still coming. That's just the media.
But the economy's still growing. Jobs still being created.
This was
Number
an
5 in the
outside
country.
fight coming in, making North Carolina the epicenter of bathroom rights.
Let's go to voter ID. Economy doing well. We've established that. This is largely a misanthropic attempt on the HB2. But on voter ID, Why is this? You've been. I watched with disdain when you were accused of being some things. I know personally that you are not, and that has to do with racism. I have known you for years. I knew you when you were mayor of Charlotte. We've been friends. I'm astounded when people cast aspersions to you in that way. I mean, you've been very fair to all, as far as I know, ever, even going after the right on some occasions as mayor of Charlotte. So
as governor,
and even as governor,
I got some of the right mad at me with the magistrates thing because I'm going to uphold the oath of my Constitution.
Right. And you did say that. Now, what do you make of this situation with voter ID? This doesn't sound complicated.
Well, first of all, I'm being called a bigot.
Yes, appallingly
by the WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party and their WikiLeaks not only called me a bigot, they said I'm a moronic Tar Heel bigot.
Wow.
Which Tar Heel, they're slamming our whole state.
Yeah.
And those are fighting words for me. That's serious
You've been
stuff.
striding
And I
about
haven't
this.
heard Roy Cooper or anyone else apologize or that person be fired who did these notes. And the people who did celebrations about boycotts of North Carolina, the Democratic Party, it's a machine.
But voter ID, you're having to get counsel from outside the state. It sounds
Roy
to me.
Cooper, I told the media
The Attorney General will not defend that law.
I'm the one who told the media that the Roy Cooper wasn't going to defend the law. And by the way, the Constitution and a 1929 law says, or I think an earlier law, Roy Cooper has to defend the law. That's his job, sworn oath to defend the laws of North Carolina. And my job is to enforce the laws of North Carolina.
Right.
No exceptions. Even those laws I disagree with, I have to enforce. But Roy Cooper's been given a free pass, and he's not upholding his oath of office because he disagrees with the law. What would happen if we had police officers who, I'm going to quit doing my job because I disagree with that law?
Do you have discussions with them? You guys have your cabinet meetings with the Council of State every month.
Right.
Do you guys have, you guys seem to have a filial relationship outside of the world of politics.
I've never probably had a conversation over 2 minutes with Roy Cooper.
Wow.
We can't find him except at the Council of State building meetings which last no more than 10 minutes.
40, okay, 10 minutes.
And then he walks out. But nice guy, but we can't find him. We cannot. He doesn't show up at events. We don't see him at public events. The media rarely talks to him.
We've invited him on the show multiple times, and you know me, I'll do a fair interview.
He reminds me a little bit of Mike Easley, another nice guy, but he just hides, and he's been hiding for 14 years.
Looking forward, what is, you've seen the economy grow, the 3 E's, your education, you've got raises, the efficiency, government's becoming more efficient, you guys have more money in the rainy day fund, and the degree to which in the environment, you guys are making strides there. What are you looking forward to in this election? Because you've got a story to tell, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to talk about some issues that we don't talk about, that I talk about, but I can't get the public to talk about. In fact, Jim Gardner, the former lieutenant governor, just sent me a note, and I'm so proud of him being ahead of the ABC. I'm worried about addiction and mental health in our country and in our communities and our families. And we've got major cartels selling heroin and in families and schools right now in North Carolina and across our nation. I'm worried about mental health patients being dropped off in our prisons and our jails and our emergency rooms, and we have no plan for mental health. I'm implementing, working with Justice Martin on trying to deal with addiction, drug sales, and mental health.
And this doesn't get a lot of attention. This is something that gets
nothing.
nothing.
It's probably 20% of our budget. And I think it's one of the most serious problems in our nation right now.
And we've seen this
and we
document.
celebrate people getting high and drunk
in
and
popular
fat
media.
And dumb. In popular media, and we're paying for it now as a society. And even in our universities, we're now enforcing alcohol and drugs in our universities, but we're also offering AA.
Right.
We're offering education programs because these kids that are going through their rite of passage of getting high and drunk in our universities, so many of them are dropping off, and that costs them and our taxpayers.
Well, Governor, we appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our broadcast and taking the time to come in studio here, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon and catching up on what else is happening out there.
Thank you very much.
We keep an eye on your house from here. I mean, we can see it.
See how much you can see.
We can just see the roof. So if you're ever up there and you want to just wave from the roof. And Governor McCrory,
thanks, Chad.
Thanks for being a part of the show. Much more to go here on Chad Adams Show, chadadamshow.com. As always, stay tuned.